Imagine this. A little black girl, no older than 10, standing in a narrow aisle of a crowded airplane. She's excited, clutching a notebook filled with airplane sketches and dreams of flying. But then a flight attendant frowns at her and says sharply, "Sweetheart, passengers like you need to wait at the back." Humiliated, the girl lowers her eyes and walks toward the rear of the plane. But what happens next, just minutes later, shocks everyone on board. This is a story of how one little girl's dream couldn't be pushed to the back of the plane because destiny had reserved her a seat at the very front. The flight had just begun boarding. Families shuffled in with strollers, businessmen wrestled with overhead luggage, and kids pressed their faces against windows. Among them was Aaliyah, a bright-eyed girl traveling with her mother. Aaliyah wasn't like most kids her age. While others dreamed of being singers or athletes, her heart belonged to the sky. She studied every plane she saw, memorized pilot signals, and filled her journal with drawings of cockpits. This wasn't just fascination, it was a calling. As she walked onto the plane, she slowed near the cockpit door. Her eyes widened at the glowing buttons, the switches, the control yokes. For her, it was like standing at the gates of heaven. The flight attendant, however, didn't see wonder. She saw a delay. Crossing her arms, she snapped, "Keep moving, honey. Passengers like you need to wait at the back." The word stung. Aaliyah's mother tightened her grip on her hand. They didn't argue. They didn't make a scene. They just walked on, but in Aaliyah's heart, something broke. Minutes later, after passengers settled in, a ripple of surprise spread through the cabin. Murmurs grew louder as heads turned toward the front of the plane. There she was, the pilot walking into the cockpit, a tall, confident black woman in uniform, adjusting her captain's hat. And when her eyes scanned the cabin, they landed directly on Aaliyah. She smiled warmly, not at the crowd, not at the crew, but at that little girl sitting near the back. Aaliyah's jaw dropped. For the first time, she saw herself reflected in her dream. The flight attendant's face, however, drained of color. She stiffened, suddenly realizing the weight of her careless words. Before takeoff, the captain made her standard announcement. But after introducing herself as Captain Denise Harris, she paused and said something unusual. "Before we push back, I want to recognize a very special passenger on board today. She's a young girl who reminded me of myself years ago when people told me to sit the back, or worse, that I didn't belong in the cockpit at all. Today, I fly not just for me, but for every little girl who's been told she couldn't." The cabin fell silent. Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears. Passengers applauded. Even the flight attendant, red-faced, clapped hesitantly. After the flight, Captain Harris invited Aaliyah and her mother into the cockpit. She let her sit in the co-pilot seat, explaining the instruments and controls. "Never let anyone tell you where you belong," the captain whispered. "The back of the plane is only a place to sit. The front, that's where you steer your life." That moment lit a fire in Aaliyah's heart. Years later, she would go on to earn her wings, and eventually, she herself became one of the youngest black female pilots at her airline. And the same words a flight attendant once used to push her back became the very fuel that pushed her forward. So next time you feel pushed aside, remember this: where people place you doesn't define where you can go. Aaliyah's story proves that the front of the plane, the front of life, is for anyone who dares to dream big enough. Backhand index pointing right if this story inspired you. Share it with someone who needs a reminder. And let me know in the comments, have you ever been underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong?